My boyfriend proposed to me at our 5-year anniversary dinner, while his secret fiancée Rafetted watched from across the restaurant. When she confronted us, he told everyone I was his unstable ex who couldn't let go. The crystal chandeliers of Le Jardin suddenly felt like they were closing in on me as Michael knelt before me, a velvet box open in his hand. 5 years together, 3 cities, countless promises, and the life we carefully built crystallized in that moment. Evelyn, he said, his voice carrying through the hushed restaurant. You are my everything. I should have noticed the nervous way his eyes darted past me, but I was too overwhelmed by the perfection of the moment. The ring sparkled, his smile seemed genuine, and I felt the eyes of other diners on us witnessing what I thought was the beginning of forever. Yes, I whispered, tears streaming down my cheeks as he slipped the ring on my finger. The perfect fit, like it was meant to be. That's when I heard the shatter of glass behind me. A woman with sleek blonde hair stood frozen champagne pulling at her stilettos, her face contorted in disbelief. Michael, her voice cracked like thin ice. What is this? Michael's face drained of color for one excruciating second. Nobody moved. Then he stood stepping away from me like I'd suddenly burst into flames. Sarah, I can explain. She stormed toward us, trembling. Explain what? That you've been with me for 7 years, but you are proposing to do her. The restaurant fell deadly silent. My heartbeat roared in my ears as I looked between them, my mind refusing to process what was happening. 7 years? I managed to whisper, my voice foreign to my own ears. Michael's expression shifted then, a subtle transformation that made my blood run cold. He turned to the woman, his eyes softening. Sarah, baby, I am so sorry about this. Then he addressed the stunned onlookers, his voice controlled, reasonable. Everyone, I apologize for the disturbance. This is Evelyn, my ex. She's been unstable since we broke up last year. She keeps telling people we're still together. The bottom dropped out of my world. She found out I was proposing to my fiancé Rafetted tonight, he continued, placing a protective arm around Sarah, who was now looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. I should have had security here. Michael, what are you? My voice broke. I looked down at the ring still on my finger. We had breakfast together this morning. We live together. People were whispering now. A waitress approached cautiously. Ma'am, I think it's best if you leave. She has our apartment keys, Michael said to Sarah, but loud enough for everyone to hear. She broke in last month. I didn't press charges because I felt sorry for her. The room began to spin. Faces blurred around me, judging, pitying, believing him without question. The ring that moments ago had represented my future now burned against my skin. You picked me up from my office yesterday, I said desperately, looking at the faces around me for anyone who might believe me. We've been together for 5 years. Sarah was crying now, playing perfectly into his narrative. This has to stop, Michael. I can't keep doing this. She terrifies me. Someone was recording with their phone. Another person murmured about calling the police. Michael's face showed only concern, a perfect mask hiding whatever lay beneath. I pulled the ring off my hand, shaking violently. You're lying, I said, but even I could hear the defeat in my voice. I dropped the ring on the table where it rolled in tiny circles like a carnival game. Nobody could win. The Mar-a-Lago appeared at my elbow. Miss, please don't make this more difficult. As they escorted me out, I caught one last glimpse of Michael comforting Sarah, smoothing her hair as she buried her face in his chest. His eyes met mine over her shoulder, not with guilt or remorse, but something worse. Nothing at all. As if I truly were a stranger outside, the cool September night hit my bare shoulders. My phone buzzed with a text notification from Michael. Thun, don't go home. Your things are packed. I'll leave them with the doorman. Please get help. Evelyn, asterisk. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, watching happy couples enter the restaurant, unaware they were walking into a place where someone's life had just imploded. My 5-year relationship hadn't just ended. It had been erased, rewritten into something ugly and false, and everyone had believed him without question. My boss called me into her office 3 days after the proposal disaster, her face tight with discomfort. Evelyn, we need to discuss some concerns that have come to our attention. I'd been staying at a hotel, unable to return to what I'd thought was our apartment. Michael had actually changed the locks. The doorman, who I'd greeted every day for 2 years, handed me 3 hastily packed suitcases and avoided meeting my eyes. What concerns? I asked, though I already knew. The churning in my stomach told me exactly what was coming. Jessica shifted papers on her desk. We've received some disturbing information about your personal conduct. Watam, I wouldn't address this, but several clients have expressed reservations about working with you. Of course they had. Michael was the marketing director at 4 Media Group, which handled accounts for half the clients at our PR firm. His influence was everywhere. This isn't about my work performance, I said flatly. No, Jessica admitted. Your work has always been excellent, but perception matters in our industry. She slid a folder toward me. We're putting you on leave while we assess the situation. I didn't touch the folder. He's lying about everything. Evelyn, she said with practiced gentleness. Several people witnessed your episode at Le Jardin. The video has been shared widely. My cheeks burned. Video, she nodded uncomfortably. It's making rounds in industry circles. Someone had recorded my humiliation and shared it like entertainment. I wondered if they'd captured the beginning, the proposal, or just the part where I was portrayed as delusional. Have you considered that maybe Michael isn't being truthful? I tried, hearing the desperation in my voice. Jessica's expression told me everything. She'd already decided who to believe. Take some time, she said, closing the subject. Use it to sort things out. I walked out of the office with my personal items in a cardboard box, feeling eyes follow me to the elevator. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood froze. Dioped. I know what you did to Michael and Sarah. Stay away from them, or everyone will know what you are really capable of. Asterisk. By evening, 3 clients I'd worked with personally had sent emails terminating our relationship. 2 mentioned personal reasons. 1 was more direct. They couldn't work with someone emotionally unstable. I sat on the hotel bed, surrounded by the remnants of the life I'd packed into 3 suitcases, and scrolled through old photos of Michael and me. Christmas at his parents' house, ordinary weeknight dinners. 5 years of memories that apparently only existed in my mind. I found his mother's number and called with shaking hands. Evelyn, her voice was wary. I'm not sure I should be speaking with you. Mrs. Harmon, please. I don't understand what's happening. Michael and I were together for 5 years. We lived together. How can he say Michael told us everything? She interrupted. He's been with Sarah since college. They're engaged. He said you've been creating stories about your relationship with him. My throat closed, but I've been to your house. We spent last Christmas there. Yes, you came as his friend from work. You seemed intense then too. Her voice softened with pity. Honey, I think you need to talk to someone. Michael says you've been building this fantasy for years. I hung up, my reality fracturing further. Had I imagined everything? Number that was impossible. I scrolled frantically through my photos again, evidence of our life together, but most were yelling or photos I'd taken of him. Few showed us together, and those that did were casual group shots. I realized something else as I scrolled. My Photography, once my passion, the thing that lit me up inside, had dwindled to nothing over our years together. Michael had always discouraged it, calling it a hobby whenever I mentioned pursuing it more seriously. The creative field is so unstable, he'd say. You are lucky to have your prior job. It supports our lifestyle. Our lifestyle, his lifestyle, the expensive apartment, the social obligations, the careful curation of our image. I curled up around my phone where my dwindling bank account showed I had maybe 3 more nights in this hotel before I'd have to figure something else out. Out tight my window, the city continued on, indifferent to the fact that my life had been stolen and rewritten by the man I'd loved. We went with another candidate who's a better fit for our company culture. The rejection email arrived while I was sitting in a coffee shop, my 4th interview in 2 weeks falling through mysteriously after initial enthusiasm. I'd moved into a tiny studio apartment that smelled perpetually of that restaurant below, my savings nearly depleted. I closed my laptop and gazed out the window, watching people live their normal lives. Did they know how quickly everything could change? How you could be erased so completely? Evelyn, is that you? I turned to find Dominic Shen standing beside my table, his familiar smile widening in recognition. We'd been friends years ago before Michael had subtly pushed my old circle away. Dom, what are you doing here? For the first time in weeks, I felt a genuine smile form. I own this place. He gestured around proudly. Opened it last year, but also run the gallery next door. What about you? Last I heard you were killing it in Prior. My smile faltered. I am between opportunities at the moment. Dom slid into the chair across from me, his expression shifting to concern. You okay? You look like my life exploded. I laughed hollowly. That about sums it up. As the clefati emptied for the afternoon lull, I found myself telling Dom everything. He listened without interruption, his expression darkening as I described Michael's elaborate deception and the aftermath. That's some calculated psychological warfare, Dom said when I finished. And now he's blacklisting you professionally? Seems that way. I had an interview at Meridian Communications. Everything went great until the next day when they suddenly went cold. Wound out later, their biggest client is Kerr Media. Dom's expression shifted as he made the connection. Michael's company? I can't prove anything, but it's happening too consistently to be coincidence. Dom was quiet for a moment, then looked at me intently. Do you still take photographs? The question caught me off guard. Not really, Haventon years. Why not? You were brilliant. I shrugged uncomfortably. Michael thought it was impractical, said I should focus on my career. The career he's now systematically destroying, Dom observed. Put that way, it struck me how thoroughly Michael had controlled my life, not through overt domination, but through subtle redirection, always couched in practicality and concern. My gallery has an opening next month, Dom continued. One of our photographers dropped out. I've seen your work, Evelyn. You could fill that spot. I blinked at him, disbelieving. I haven't shot anything portfolio-worthy in years, so start now. He leaned forward. What's stopping you? What's stopping you? Asterisk. The question echoed in my mind that evening as I unpacked a box I'd shoved in the back of my closet. Indelicide was my old Canon, untouched for so long the battery wouldn't hold a charge. My phone pinged with a notification and email from an address I didn't recognize. Asterisk. Miss Parker, I am reaching out regarding your application to Horizon Partners. While your qualifications are impressive, we received concerning information about your professional conduct from a Sarah Williams. As a courtesy, I wanted to inform you that she has been contacting references not listed on your application. Asterisk. I stared at the name. Sarah Williams, Michael's fiancée Rafet. She wasn't just a passive participant in Michael's lie, she was actively working to destroy me. Another ping, a text from Dom. We found an extra battery for that Canon model. It's waiting for you at the Classe Brienne whenever you are ready. Asterisk. I looked between the messages, something shifting inside me. For weeks I'd been reacting, scrambling to defend a life that had been expertly dismantled. But what if I stopped trying to reclaim what was lost and started building something new? The next morning I pawned the bracelet Michael had given me for our anniversary and used the money to buy a new camera battery and memory cards. By afternoon I was walking through Prospect Park, camera in hand, seeing the world through a lens for the first time in years. Every click of the shutter felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a piece that Michael had carefully, methodically stripped away. Hold that expression, I called to Maya, who was perched on a weathered pier, the Manhattan skyline glittering behind her in the dusk light. She turned slightly, the golden hour illuminating half her face while shadows sculpted the other half. Perfect contrast, just what I needed for the Duality series. 6 weeks had passed since that day in Dom's coffee shop. 6 weeks of rediscovering my eye for composition, light, and story. My muscles ached from carrying equipment and contorting into strange positions for the perfect shot. But it was a good pain, the kind that meant growth. That's a wrap, I said, reviewing the last shots on my camera display. These are exactly what I needed. Maya hopped down from her perch, peering over my shoulder. Damn, you made me look good. I smiled, genuinely pleased with the results. Maya had been one of the first friends to reach out after the implosion of my life went semi-viral in our social circle. And for others who had awkwardly faded away, she'd shown up at my new apartment with wine and no judgment. Ready to grab dinner? She asked as we packed up my equipment over pasta at a tiny Italian restaurant. Maya watched me flip through the day's shots on my camera, her expression thoughtful. You know, she said, twirling linguine around her fork. It's like you were coming back to life. I looked up, surprised by her observation. I mean it, she continued. When you were with Michael, you just dimmed over time. I noticed it. But whenever I tried to say anything, you'd get defensive. I did. I couldn't remember any such conversations. Well, not you exactly. It was always when Michael was around. He'd jump in with some comment about how busy you both were, how your job was demanding but rewarding, she shrugged. Classic isolation tactic. Looking back, the pasta suddenly tasted like cardboard in my mouth. He isolated me. Gradually, she nodded. First it was just flaking on group plans, then it became harder to see one-on-one. Seth. Anytime friends came up, he'd make some comment about how immature or problematic someone was. I set down my fork, memories rearranging themselves. How many friendships had faded during my years with Michael? How many interests had I abandoned because they didn't fit into the life he was constructing? I ran into Alexis last week, Maya said, changing subject slightly. She mentioned seeing Michael and Sarah at some industry event. My stomach tightened and, apparently they were arguing intensely. Sarah stormed off, and Michael spent the rest of the night aggressively networking like nothing happened. Maya hesitated. Alexis also said they've done this before. Done what before? The whole dual life thing. Fraternally, Michael did something similar when he first moved to New York. Not exactly the same setup, but he was dating multiple women, presenting himself differently to each of them. I shouldn't have cared anymore, but the information still stung, so I wasn't special, I said with a bitter laugh. Just another target, or maybe you were special, Maya countered. Alexis said he'd never gone as far as he did with you. 5 years is a long con. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. Why would anyone anyone do this? What could they possibly gain? Maya's expression darkened. Control, power, or maybe Tyr is something more practical. Dreading, you say he used your connections for his business sometimes? I nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. Through my prior work, I'd introduced Michael to several important clients. Had that been the goal all along, to use me for connections then discard me when I was no longer useful? But that didn't explain Sarah's role in all this. If she'd been with him for 7 years, as she claimed, why participate in destroying me now? Unless she'd always known about me, this was part of their pattern. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a photo Maya had sent from the night at Le Jardin R from the viral video someone had taken. In it, Sarah's face was twisted in shock and pain as she confronted Michael and me, but something about her expression had always bothered me. Now, looking with fresh eyes, I recognized what it was. Her performance was too perfect, too composed in its distress, like she'd practiced it. I need to find out more about Sarah Williams, I said, putting my phone away, and I think I know where to start. The clef meaty where Michael and I first met had changed names twice since then, but the layout remained the same. I chose a table in the corner with a clear view of the entrance and weighted my camera bag beside me more for comfort than necessity. 10 minutes later, Deifer arrived, her careful scan of the room confirming my suspicions. She was nervous about meeting me. Thanks for coming, I said as she slid into the chair opposite mine. Jasmine had been an assistant at Freer Media when Michael first joined the company. We'd met a few times at office parties, exchanged pleasantries, nothing substantial enough to explain why she'd reached out to me through Instagram with a cryptic message. And I have information about Michael and Sarah you should know. Asterisk, I can't stay long, she said, her fingers nervously tracing the rim of her water glass. If they knew I was talking to you, they won't hear it from me, I assured her. What's this about? Jasmine took a deep breath. I saw what happened to you, the video I mean, and I couldn't stay quiet knowing what I know. My pulse quickened. Which is Sarah knew about you the whole time. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. She wasn't just some innocent fiancé refette who discovered her boyfriend's double life. She was part of it. Despite my suspicions, hearing it confirmed sent a chill through me. How do you know this? Because I helped them once. Amentine colored her voice. 3 years ago, Michael asked me to pretend to be his assistant at an event where you and some other woman would both be present. He had me run interference, making sure you two never crossed paths. The room tilted slightly. I remembered that event, a charity gala where Michael had been unusually attentive, insisting I stay by his side except when his assistant needed him for urgent business matters. To here's more, Ayers continued. After what happened to you, I started paying attention. They have a system. Sarah works client acquisition from her end, she's in wealth management, and Michael handles marketing. Together, they collect clients from different angles. And where do I fit in? My voice sounded hollow to my own ears. Your prior connections. The clients you introduced to Crier over the years, they're some of the biggest accounts now. She hesitated, but you are not the first. There was another woman before you, Rachel something. She was in event planning. What happened to her? Same basic playbook from what I gather. Michael dated her for about 2 years, then engineered a dramatic public breakup that made her look unstable. She ended up leaving the industry altogether. My mind raced, trying to process this information. Not just a betrayal, but a calculated scheme with multiple victims. Here's one more thing. Jerry reached into her bag and slid a flash drive across the table. After I saw what they did to you, I started documenting things, emails, calendar invites, photos from events where they were running their dame. It's all here. Why are you doing this? Because they're doing it again. Her eyes met mine. Chihir is a new woman. Michael's presenting himself as single, recently relocated from Chicago. Meanwhile, he and Sarah are planning their wedding. I picked up the flash drive, the weight of it insignificant compared to what it represented. Have you gone to the police? Jasmine shook her head. With what crime? Being manipulative assholes isn't illegal, and Barrier's legal team would destroy me. She glanced at her watch and stood. I need to go. Be careful, Evelyn. These people ruin lives for sport. That night, I pored over the contents of the flash drive. Photos of Michael with different women at different events, often with Sarah visible in the background watching screenshots of email exchanges discussing targets and acquisition strategy. Hintani and bites with coded references to what appeared to be their various SARP essays. Most disturbing were the files about me, detailed notes on my professional connections, family background, psychological profile. They had mapped out my vulnerabilities from the beginning, but Taya had also included something unexpected. An invitation to Michael and Sarah's engagement party, scheduled for the following weekend at the Stillwell Hotel. I stared at the invitation, an idea forming dangerous, perhaps unwise, but impossible to ignore. They had systematically destroyed my life and were preparing to do the same to someone else. The question wasn't whether I should stop them, but how. The Stillwell Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with champagne flutes and forced laughter, the natural habitat of people who networked even during social events. I adjusted my blonde wig and glasses, grateful that most of these people had only seen me in the viral video where I'd been tear-streaked and disheveled. Another champagne, miss? A server paused beside me. No thank you. I needed a clear head for what I was about to do across the room. Michael and Sarah held court, accepting congratulations from a revolving door of well-wishers. They looked perfect together, his hand possessively at the small of her back, her smile tilted up at him adoringly. The performance was flawless. I circulated slowly, eavesdropping on conversations, identifying key players, the CEO of Rahar Media, potential investors, clients worth millions. This wasn't just an engagement party. It was a business opportunity masquerading as a personal celebration. Near the dessert table, I overheard two women whispering. Can't believe he invited her, one said. Who? Melissa, the new girl from the Chicago office. Pertinely, she and Michael have been close. I scanned the room until I spotted her mid-20s, pretty in an understated way, looking slightly uncomfortable as she stood alone by a pillar. The next target. It was time. I made my way to the AB booth where a board technician was scrolled through his phone. Excuse me, I said, flashing the event coordinator badge I'd counterfeited. We need to make a slight adjustment to the presentation. 5 minutes later, I positioned myself near a service exit and sent a text to the number Taffy had provided. Almost immediately, the lights dimmed slightly and the MC's voice rang out. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please. The future Mr. and Mrs. Harmon have prepared a special presentation to share with you all tonight. Michael and Sarah moved to the center of the room, both looking momentarily confused. This wasn't part of their program. Before they could object, the large screens around the ballroom flickered to life. Instead of whatever they'd planned, the screens displayed a grid of photographs. Michael with me at various events over our 5 years together, Michael with another woman, presumably Rachel, at different functions, Commentili Spearn highlighting double-booked dates with different women, our minge exchanges between Michael and Sarah discussing their acquisition strategy and target profiles. The room fell deadly silent, then a final image appeared appeared. Michael and Sarah in a hotel bar with what appeared to be a potential investor with a timestamp from 3 days ago. Beside them a whiteboard with partially visible with a flowchart labeled Williams Harmon Client Acquisition Modal and a list of names including several people present in the room. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Michael lunged toward the AB booth, his face contorted with rage, but it was too late. Exclamation scene security. Sarah screamed, her perfect composure cracking. Someone shut this off. I moved through the confusion toward Melissa, who stood frozen, staring at the screens in horror. They've done this before, I said quietly, handing her a sealed envelope, and they'll do it again. That's my contact information, along with proof of what they did to me. You might need it. Her wide eyes met mine with dawning recognition. You are the unstable ex. Yes, Ashette, I wasn't his ex, and I wasn't unstable. I glanced over at Michael, who was frantically trying to explain to a group of visibly angry clients. At least not until they made me that way. I turned to leave, but Melissa caught my arm. Thank you, she whispered, as I walked toward the exit. Sarah stepped into my path, her perfect features twisted with fury. You think this changes anything? We'll recover. We always do. I looked at her calmly. Maybe, but they'll always question you now. They'll wonder what else you've lied about, what other schemes you are running. I nodded toward the dispersing crowd. You can't con people who no longer trust you. This isn't over, she threatened. Actually, it is. I removed my glasses and wig, facing her directly, for me at least. But I wonder how many others will come forward now. I left her standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of her carefully constructed world, and walked out into the cool night air, feeling lighter than I had in months. Stunning work, Evelyn Purdue. Stunning. 3 months after the engagement party confrontation, I stood in Dom's gallery surrounded by my photographs. The exhibition titled Exposed, Flow and Dreadity featured images that explored the contrast between appearance and reality, masked figures revealing their true selves in reflections, urban landscapes where beauty and decay existed side by side, portraits showing subjects in moments of genuine emotion alongside their public sarces. Critics had called it a piercing exploration of authentic identity in an age of purity deception. I called it therapy. Dom handed me a glass of champagne. Have you seen how many red dots we have? He sold out on opening night. I smiled still, not quite believing this was my life now. After the engagement party, I'd thrown myself into my photography with renewed purpose. The work had poured out of me raw, honest, cathartic. Miss Parker, a tall woman in an impeccably tailored suit, approached. Myra Vasson, creative director at Aperture Magazinen, your work is extraordinary. We chatted for several minutes about technique and inspiration before she handed me her card. We're planning a feature on emerging photographers challenging conventional narratives. I'd love to include your work. As she walked away, Dom nudged me. Told you, this is just the beginning. Later, as the crowd thinned, I wandered through the gallery alone, seeing my journey captured in images. The stark, isolated subjects of my earliest pieces giving way to more complex, intricate compositions as the collection progressed. The final photograph, the centerpiece of the exhibition, showed a woman standing at a crossroads, her face in profile, half in shadow, half illuminated. The path behind her was littered with broken glass. The path ahead opened to an expansive horizon. It was titled simply, Choice. My phone buzzed with a notification on email from an unfamiliar address. Asterisk Miss Parker. Asterisk son, you don't know me, but I believe we share a connection through Michael Harmon. I recently discovered I wasn't the only one he was involved with during 2016 to 2018. After seeing what happened at their engagement party, it's all over industry gossip. I wonder if there might be more of us. Asterisk sen, if you are open to connecting, several women are meeting informally to share experiences. No pressure, just support. Asterisk Jessica, I stared at the message, conflicting emotions swirling through me. The idea that there were more victims than I knew, that this pattern stretched back further than I'd imagined was disturbing. Yet there was also something powerful in the thought of women connecting, comparing notes, perhaps preventing Michael and Sarah from harming others. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Everything okay? I glanced up at my photograph, the woman at the crossroads, then back at my phone. I am not sure, I answered honestly. I have to decide whether I want to keep looking back or focus on moving forward. Dom studied the centerpiece photograph. Maybe it's not either, or maybe understanding your past clearly is part of creating your future. The gallery had emptied now, leaving just the two of us surrounded by fragments of my journey captured in light and shadow. The thing about crossroads, I said finally, is that sometimes you don't immediately recognize them for what they are. Sometimes you think you are just walking a familiar path until suddenly everything changes. I looked down at my phone again, the email still open, waiting for my response, and sometimes I continued more to myself than to Dom. The path forward includes helping others avoid the trap she fell into. Outside the gallery windows, the city lights glimmered against the darkening sky, thousands of stories unfolding simultaneously, intersecting in ways both random and deliberate. You mean out there Michael and Sarah were likely rebuilding their scheme, adapting to the exposure, identifying new targets, and some were women like Jessica were comparing notes, connecting dots, recognizing patterns. I took a deep breath and began typing my reply, unsure exactly where this path would lead, but certain that whatever came next would be on my terms, through my lens with my eyes wide open. Why Jessica, asterisk sen, I'd like to hear more. Let's talk, asterisk Evelyn, I